Hi, I'm Sasha Moore, and I am here with Steve Lake, who is the Director of Partnerships at the boutique aggregator National Lending Group, otherwise known as NLG. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks again for having me.
Of course, you know I love interviewing you. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you about today is I've heard you reference the NLG PD days and so forth, the notion of brokers doing health checks for their clients. And I know that this is by no means a new concept, but it has resonated with me because I think it's particularly timely to offset and sort of provide some calm in a very, very turbulent environment. And I would expect that the majority of borrowers, whether they're personal or business borrowers, are affected to some extent
Mm.
or compounded extent by whether it's inflation, housing recorrection, supply chain issues, rate rises, all of those Molotov cocktail macroeconomic pressure points that are happening right now. And I think what I would like to do today is just to drill down what that health check looks like, because I know sort of, maybe 10 years ago when that whole notion came up, it was almost doing like a quiz and seeing what score
Yep.
you got and sort of deciding which bucket you then were in. But, obviously the market's so much more sophisticated than that. And I know
Mm.
that NLG has a more bespoke principle with a health check for brokers to then make sure that their client is in a more sound financial position. So can you just sort of talk me through your model of a health check and what you suggest brokers do to really make sure they thoroughly understand their borrower?
Excellent. Great question and really important at this point in time. So we might separate that into two parts, and part A being with your current customers at the moment. So we highly recommend that it's more about checking in on them. Okay. So we know that so much has changed in the last 6 months in terms of high inflation, plus also the interest rate rises. And we find it to be rather than a numbers game. And the reality is that most brokers have done a health check to try and generate more business, right? So hoping that the client might still be on a reasonably poor rate, and or might need to do something, and so it's an opportunity to refinance and write more loans. That's sort of changing now. It's more about a making sure as the human being that your customers are okay in this environment, because it's very tough financially, and there's a lot of families having very serious conversations right now around their budgeting and household expenditure, mortgages, etc. And so you can almost, and if we look at the runoff rates at the moment, we're seeing around 32 to 34% runoff rate on mortgages, where generally it can be around 16 to 18. Now, what that represents is that 1 out of 3 of your borrowers are looking to refinance today. So if you're not talking to them and checking in on them and showing absolute care and that you're actually diligent in trying to help them with their situation, it's likely they will go. Now, the upside to that and the opportunity is that we've all, as brokers, have databases of people that we've spoken to in the past and they haven't done a loan with us. Now's the time to strike. And the reason is that a lot of brokers are starting to leave the industry, or they're sort of more playing a more passive game and sort of, I guess, putting their heads in the sand and hoping everything's going to be okay. And my experience would tell me that, out of every 10 brokers, you've probably got 2 that are really diligent in that space, and the rest not so much. There is automation coming into the space, such as Sherlock, who are doing an amazing job, but they haven't had a very big reach yet in the broker market. They will have, no doubt, but at this time, it leaves an opportunity for good brokers that have got those extended databases to make sure you ring your own customers that are on your trail book, to check in on them. And when I say check in, don't just talk about the home loan, talk about everything. Talk about how they're feeling. What is it? What pain are they feeling? What are they having arguments? Husband and wife, are they arguing about money? Because it's going to be happening. Are the kids feeling stressed because they can't have the things they used to have or go the places they used to go? Because it's happening out there in the real world right now. These conversations are prolific. And that's what I would do with my customer base. And that's the way I would do it. Be human about it. Don't just focus on trying to get another loan, right? It's about helping people out. The second part is we work with a lot of accountants, and accountants are quite seasonal in terms of the way they service their customers. So this time of year in sort of October, heading into the October. It's more about businesses planning and accounting firms planning their next strategy steps as well. So when it comes to working with accountants and their clients, we might start seeing a little bit of planning around businesses expanding or businesses restructuring in preparation of expanding their business. It's kind of like an opportune time. We're getting up to the slow time of the year. Most of the work for the year is probably almost been done by now, and so it's about setting ourselves for that next stage as business owners. So they tend to sort of do a lot of planning this time of year. Come February, it's tax planning season, and you need, as a broker, if you have an accountant as a relationship, you need to be talking to them constantly about each of their customers, each of their clients, on what their borrowing capacity is and what their income needs to show in terms of, are we going to show a lot of depreciation, or are we going to show a lot of tax deductibles at this particular point in time, or are we going to hold it over depending on what the needs of the business are in terms of its lending capacity. A good lender and accountant, or good broker and accountant relationship, will always have those really important conversations around what the next step is for the client and where they're actually going to be able to help. If that makes sense.